The story begins on an ordinary afternoon in a small, unnamed town, the kind of place where people pride themselves on knowing each other, where neighbors wave, and where trouble is assumed to be something that happens somewhere else. But on this particular day, behind a simple facade of calm normalcy, something was happening that would soon become the center of a dramatic and emotionally charged tale. A 6-year-old girl, described as shy, small for her age, and constantly clutching a worn-out plush toy, was allegedly living through a nightmare inside her own home. According to the blogs retelling the story, her stepfather, outwardly respectable, professionally successful, and known to the community as a family man, was in reality a controlling and abusive figure. He allegedly terrorized the child through both physical and emotional violence. The articles paint him as a classic double-faced villain, a man who smiled in public but turned brutal within the confines of his home. The child's mother is depicted as overwhelmed, financially dependent on her husband, and emotionally subdued to the point of helplessness. She loved her daughter but, the story claims, was paralyzed by fear and manipulation. The stepfather had convinced her that reporting him would only make things worse. This allowed the abuse to continue unchecked. One night, according to the narrative, the violence escalated. The stepfather supposedly told the girl he was going to take her away, implying something darker than simply driving her to another location. Terrified and believing she was in immediate danger, the girl escaped the house as soon as an opportunity arose. Dressed in pajamas, barefoot, and shaken, she ran down the street until she reached a small roadside restaurant. Tears streaked her face, and she clutched her plush toy like a life preserver as she ducked into the restroom. Inside the restaurant at that moment were several bikers. They were the stereotypical kind: leather jackets, patches, heavy boots, tattoos, big frames, and louder-than-life personalities. To a passerby, and especially to a frightened child, they might look intimidating. The story plays heavily on this contrast: the scary-looking bikers, who turn out to be unexpected heroes. One of them, a large man nicknamed Tank, heard muffled sobs coming from the restroom hallway. At first, he ignored it. People cry for all sorts of reasons, and he wasn't trying to intrude. But after several minutes, the crying didn't stop, it intensified. Something about the sound struck him as wrong. Instinctively, he got up from his seat. When he approached the restroom door, he gently knocked and asked if everything was okay. The girl, startled, didn't answer at first. But after Tank spoke a second time, this time in a quiet, reassuring tone, the girl finally cracked the door open just enough for her face to peek through. That was the first moment he saw the bruises. The story claims the bruises were unmistakable. Some older, yellowing, others fresh, dark, and severe. Right away, Tank realized something was very wrong. He didn't yell or panic. Instead, he crouched down, lowered his voice, and tried to earn her trust. It didn't take long for her to blurt out what she feared most. "My stepfather wants to take me away. Please don't let him." The biker swallowed hard. He later told the others he had never heard a child sound so desperate. Feeling the urgency of the situation, Tank called over 2 fellow bikers. They escorted the girl to their table, brought her water, and asked simple questions to avoid overwhelming her. She told them about the threats, the beatings, and the cameras reportedly hidden in her room. She said she had run away because she thought she wouldn't be alive if she stayed. As the bikers listened, anger simmered beneath their calm expressions. Their protective instincts kicked in immediately. Despite their rough exterior, many biker organizations have a strong culture of looking out for vulnerable people, particularly children. The blogs emphasize this point repeatedly. Beneath the leather and the noise is a deeply ingrained loyalty to justice and defense of the defenseless. Tank instructed the restaurant staff to lock the doors. They positioned themselves around the girl like a human shield. One biker stood near every entrance. Another phoned authorities. Another texted fellow members of their motorcycle club to come quickly. Within minutes, according to the story, motorcycles began pulling into the parking lot one by one, then by the dozens. The noise of engines filled the air, growing louder as more bikers arrived. Customers inside the restaurant grew uneasy, unsure whether something dangerous was unfolding. But for the little girl, the sound signaled hope. She was no longer alone. When the stepfather eventually arrived, enraged, demanding his daughter back, he found himself facing a wall of bikers. They didn't threaten him. They didn't get physical. Their mere presence was enough to keep him at a distance. Tank stood in front, arms crossed, and calmly informed him that he wasn't going anywhere near the child. At this point, the stepfather allegedly attempted to bluff, claiming the bikers were harboring a runaway. But the child, shaking, emerged from the restaurant and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Please don't let him take me." That single sentence was all the bikers needed to stand their ground. Police arrived soon after. The officers questioned both sides, separated the stepfather, and inspected the girl's injuries. After gathering preliminary statements and seeing the bruises firsthand, they took the stepfather into custody for further investigation. A search warrant was later executed at the home, where, according to the story, investigators found hidden cameras, pre-recorded footage, and other evidence that strengthened the case against him. The girl was placed in protective care. Child Services allegedly praised the bikers for their intervention, and the officer leading the case reportedly said that if the bikers hadn't stepped in when they did, things could have ended very differently. The story closes this section by claiming that the event inspired the bikers to form an informal program to watch over. Thought the tale of the little girl and the protective bikers is emotionally powerful. Its dramatic intensity raises questions about whether it reflects an actual event or simply a piece of modern folklore. When examined more closely, the narrative shows several hallmarks of fictionalized online storytelling, the kind designed to invoke emotion, affirmation, and virality rather than to report verifiable fact. In this expanded analysis, we'll break down the reasons experts, journalists, and critical readers would view this story with skepticism. 1. Absence of credible, independent reporting. The most striking red flag is the complete absence of verifiable sourcing. Stories involving child abuse, police intervention, arrests, and discoveries of hidden cameras almost always appear in local newspapers, police blotters, or official press releases, even in small towns. Crimes of this magnitude generate paperwork, public records, and often televised coverage. Yet in this case, no such documentation exists. Every version of the narrative circulates exclusively on minor blogs and feel-good storytelling websites. No mainstream news outlet, regional newspaper, or law enforcement agency has confirmed these events. That alone casts significant doubt. Genuine child protection rescues are extremely sensitive, but when arrests occur, particularly involving hidden cameras and felony abuse, the legal system produces public record. The total absence of such evidence suggests the story was either fabricated or heavily embellished. 2. Source reliability. Blogs with repetitive story structures. The websites that publish the tale, Bikers Bite, various, viral story, blogs, and click-driven platforms, have a well-known pattern: dramatic, highly emotional stories of good triumphing over evil, often starring bikers, veterans, or rugged volunteers as unexpected heroes. These sites frequently recycle the same formulas. A vulnerable child in danger. A frightening abuser. A tough outsider unexpectedly becoming the savior. A dramatic confrontation. A sudden revelation of hidden recordings or criminal behavior. A satisfying ending involving justice and community solidarity. The repetition across unrelated stories suggests a template rather than authentic reporting. Some posts even reuse stock photos, generic character descriptions, and recycled dialogue. When multiple versions of a real-life event mirror each other nearly word for word, it signals that the content was meant to entertain, not inform. 3. Narrative tropes suggesting fiction rather than fact. Certain narrative elements in the story appear designed to maximize emotional response rather than reflect realistic events. These tropes include the innocent child in pajamas. Stories of endangered children frequently emphasize pajamas or bare feet to evoke vulnerability. While a child fleeing danger could indeed be poorly dressed, the dramatic detail is used so often online that it raises eyebrows. The scary-looking but gentle bikers. The juxtaposition of intimidating appearances with soft hearts is a popular storytelling device. It satisfies an audience's love of irony and reinforces the moral lesson: don't judge by appearances. The villain with a polite public image. Fiction often portrays abusers as socially respectable citizens with dark secrets: the doctor, the businessman, the church volunteer. While such cases do exist in the real world, the trope is used so consistently in viral moral tales that it becomes a predictable ingredient. The discovery of hidden cameras. Finding secret recording devices is an extreme claim, one that would escalate charges into major felonies. Such discoveries virtually always make the news. The fact that this alleged discovery exists nowhere outside the story's retellings undermines its credibility. A spontaneous biker army arriving within minutes. Real motorcycle groups do often ride together, but summoning dozens of bikers to one location in minutes stretches plausibility. It reads more like cinematic staging than real-life logistics. Together, these tropes build a narrative that satisfies readers emotionally, but they simultaneously weaken the argument that this was a real event. 4. Lack of identifiable details. No town, no state, no department. Another major red flag is the complete absence of specific information. No town name, no state, no date, no restaurant name, no identities of officers, no police department mentioned, no court filings, no mugshots, no child services statements, no reference to a prosecuting district attorney, no verifiable names of the bikers or their motorcycle club. Real events, even those protecting minors, almost always include at least some verifiable markers, often enough for journalists to follow up. The total vagueness around every identifying detail suggests the authors either never had those details or intentionally omitted them, likely because there was nothing real to reference. 5. Implausibly clean resolution for a complex legal situation. Stories involving child abuse, emergency removal, hidden cameras, and arrests are rarely resolved neatly or quickly. Real investigations involve multiple interviews and forensic exams, warrants requiring clear evidence or witness statements, child advocate lawyers, medical examinations, forensics teams analyzing digital evidence, court hearings, yet the story claims nearly instantaneous justice. The stepfather is swiftly arrested, incriminating evidence is quickly discovered, and the child is placed safely away from danger, all without any of the messy legal complications that occur in real life. The lack of nuance or procedural complexity is more consistent with fictional storytelling than with documented law enforcement cases. 6. No social media footprint despite viral potential. A dramatic confrontation at a restaurant involving dozens of bikers, police, and an angry parent would almost certainly attract attention. Witnesses would post photos, videos, or at least first-hand accounts. Yet a search across social media platforms reveals no videos, no pictures, no eyewitness posts, no local "what's happening downtown" chatter. In the social media era, the absence of such posts is highly unusual for an event of this magnitude. 7. The story feeds a popular hero biker archetype. Modern folklore often casts bikers as misunderstood protectors. This trend appears in viral Facebook posts, inspirational memes, reposted stories across biker forums, fictionalized accounts written to portray motorcycle clubs as modern-day guardian angels. The narrative of bikers rescuing abused children is a recurring genre, and many stories within it share nearly identical plot elements. This specific tale fits the archetype so perfectly that it reads less like a first-hand account and more like a themed parable meant to reinforce a cultural myth. 8. The ending initiates a movement, a classic hallmark of fictional morality tales. The claim that the event inspired bikers to launch a protective movement is a common ending trope in viral moral stories. It provides a sense of closure, a takeaway message, a moral lesson, a sense of hope and collective action. Yet no such movement tied to this exact story exists, nor is there any record of the supposed group's name, membership, or activity. Conclusion: a powerful story, but almost certainly not a real one. The emotional impact of the story is undeniable. It resonates because it depicts justice, bravery, and compassion triumphing over cruelty. But those same qualities make such stories ripe for embellishment and fabrication. Given the lack of sources, the reliance on storytelling tropes, the absence of verifiable details, the implausibly tidy resolution, and the exclusive presence of this tale on clickbait-style blogs, it is almost certainly fictional or heavily exaggerated rather than factual. If you'd like, I can also expand Part 3, or I can rewrite the entire analysis into a cohesive article, essay, or documentary transcript of vulnerable kids and stand guard, whenever needed, turning what started as a chance encounter into a mission of protection. If you'd like, I can also expand Part 2 or rewrite the entire story as a polished piece of fiction or investigative-style journalism.